Inauguration week in America. What to expect as events kick off tonight. The transfer of power coming as the U.S. reaches 400,000 COVID deaths. And don't forget to buy your lottery ticket. The Mega Millions and the Powerball jackpots this week, some of the biggest in history. Here's what you need to know. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Tuesday, January 19th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Carlo, good morning.
Morning, Wags. How was your long weekend?
It was fine. We when I say we did not leave the house, I don't think I had left the house for possibly a week, actually. And I know you mentioned on Friday, we had there was a COVID outbreak at my daughter's school, so it's been a kind of a tense time, to say the least.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm still waiting for my apology for you abandoning me here on Friday all by myself.
You did great, Carlo.
I'm teasing. Thank you. We missed you.
All right, well, let's get to some news because, per usual, there's a lot of it. Tomorrow's inauguration going to be among the tensest. What word is that? Tensest? Is that a word, Carlo? Tensest in modern history of this country. Coming 2 weeks after the riots at the Capitol. So it's going to be without the customary handoff or buy-in from the outgoing president in a city that is virtually locked down to the public. President-elect Biden arrives in D.C. this afternoon for a ceremony at the Lincoln Memorial to honor those who died in the pandemic. There is a national moment of unity at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time at landmarks across the country, like the Space Needle and the Empire State Building. This is ahead of tomorrow's mix of in-person and virtual inaugural events. President Trump expected to depart the White House tomorrow morning for Florida for the last time. He is not going to be taking part in any of the ceremonies. It is the first time in 150 years that the outgoing president has boycotted the successor's swearing in. There was some talk that he wanted like a military parade and he wants kind of a big hoopla around his send-off, but I'm not sure with everything on lockdown that he's going to be able to get it.
It sounds like they may try and do something for him at Joint Base Andrews when he leaves tomorrow, but I'm not sure if that's actually going to go down. I like this idea going around that the Bushes, the Clintons, and the Obamas, all of whom are going to be in D.C. This week, that they sort of step in for the traditional White House welcome as a show of bipartisan unity. I don't know if that's just going around on social media, or if that actually has any traction like in the real world, but I thought that would be sort of like a nice gesture to see. But yeah, I mean, Washington, I don't know if you've seen the videos, the photos. It's pretty, it doesn't look like an American city, that's for sure. The FBI said to be worried about a so-called second act tomorrow. They're warning law enforcement that QAnon and other far-right insurrectionists have discussed trying to pose as National Guard troops to infiltrate the inaugural. Some of them are said to have traded maps of sensitive areas in Washington. There's also fear of some lone wolf attacks, just, some, wackos that are going to try and make a mess of things tomorrow. I have to say, like I just said, I mean, judging by the photos, it's hard to imagine they'd have any luck getting anywhere close to the Capitol this week. I mean, it really does look like Baghdad on the Potomac down there. And I think, you could argue that it may even be a little bit of an overkill. I think that nobody wants to risk the slightest chance of something going wrong, given what happened on January 6th. So I think you're seeing like a major, cover your butt moment here.
There are still security personnel hoping that Biden will decide to get sworn in inside somewhere, just for safety reasons. It looks like that's not going to happen. I don't know if you caught any of the videos that came out this weekend of more videos from the actual mob violence and the other week came out. But I don't know, to me, the more information that comes out, the more video that comes out, it's incredible just how close this mob was to actually doing physical harm to Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, and perhaps others, regardless of politics. We're talking the Vice President of the United States and the Speaker of the House. One security expert said, and I think this is pretty fascinating, he said, the job now, especially for us in the media, is to make a distinction between the large swaths of people, especially Republicans, who still believe that this election was stolen. Some who may have even gone out to protest, but did it peacefully, right? And then this ultra fringe that wants to use violence as a means to whatever it is, they overtake the government, reinstate President Trump, whatever their goal is. And so for that, we're talking about groups like the Proud Boys. A security expert on CNN said it's really going to be incumbent on social media companies, especially, to do their part to crack down on these groups the same way that they've come together to crack down on ISIS, for example, being able to recruit online. It's tough, though, without some of the political pressure. When you think about it, half of the Republicans voted not to, at least in the House, voted not to certify the election results. So it's like this crazy time, and we are still, Joe Biden takes office with millions, tens of millions of Americans actually believing that he did not win the election.
That's why I think it's so hard. Yeah, it is frightening, and it's just that's why it's so hard to be like, oh, it's just these this fringe part of the Republican Party. Like, I don't know if that's the case. It seems to me like as of right now, it's sort of the conventional wisdom in the Republican Party that this is a sham. So I don't know what to do about that. But you said something a minute ago, Jill, that I think is so dead on, and I think we said this last week. But like the more distance you get from what happened on January 6th, the more you think about it, the more that comes out, the worse it seems, right? It's almost like we were underplaying it in the moment because I think we just didn't really understand. But I sort of got some distance, from the last couple of weeks this weekend. Just trying to sort of like unplug a little bit and think about where we are. And I sort of I got in touch with like a lot of the anger that I really feel. I don't know if other people feel this way too. Anger, at the people who broke into the Capitol, obviously, incredible anger at the politicians who egged them on so cynically. I'm incredibly angry at the law enforcement failures that let all of that happen. I mean, one of the reasons why I bring this up is like one of the hallmarks of the United States, right, that we've learned in school and that we carry with us as a country has been that like, as messed up as this country can be, as dysfunctional as we are, and with all of our factions and all of our tribes, we generally speaking have free and fair elections, and we always have a peaceful transfer of power, right? That's like that's part of the calling card of America, has been for 250 years now. And just like that, we can no longer say that, right? At least we can no longer say, hey, at least we live in a country that commits to a peaceful transfer of power. That's been taken from us, just like that, right? We no longer have an undefeated streak of peaceful transfers of power in America. And that's so...
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh, sorry.
Viral droplets everywhere over there.
This is why we are not sitting at a very small desk, huddled in our podcast booth anymore.
But yeah, that's just what I was going to say. It's very sad, and it's also very enraging to me.
Axios did a great report, and I really recommend you go back and they also they have a podcast on it too about how it happened, and they point to the president basically planning for this idea of saying no matter what happened with the election, if he didn't win, just claiming that it was unfair and rigged and stolen from him, and kind of how that lie and that idea turned into this, or at least where we were a couple weeks ago. Incredible. And it sounds like, I again will call upon that George Costanza line. It's not a lie if you believe it. In inner circles, the president reportedly still standing by the fact that this election was stolen from him. So it sounds like he's convinced himself that that's true. But again, there's just zero evidence of it. President-elect Biden, by the way, planning aggressive actions to undo many aspects of the Trump presidency as his first priorities in office. The administration expected to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords and the World Health Organization, cancel the Keystone XL pipeline, repeal the transgender ban in the military, end the so-called Muslim ban on travel, and propose a sweeping new immigration bill, extend the pause the pause on federal student loans, and mandate masks on federal property and interstate travel. It's all in a day's work.
Yeah, right. On the economic front, I just wanted to make mention of this. Biden has tapped Gary Gensler to run the Securities and Exchange Commission, and a man named Rohit Chopra to run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Both of those picks considered wins for progressives because these guys are sort of known for their aggressive regulatory oversight of big business. Gensler under Obama, and Chopra as an Elizabeth Warren acolyte. Janet Yellen, meanwhile, she's the nominee for Treasury Secretary. She starts her confirmation hearings today. She's expected to call for more immediate stimulus and argue that now is not the time to worry about the mounting debt, which you can bet is about to become a major, you know, line of attack, I guess you'd say, from the Republicans.
Well, and I think that the shame of this, and I don't want to go on too much of a tangent here, but I think the shame of the Trump presidency and his legacy here of kind of just the misinformation and the mob that we saw a couple weeks ago is that, again, this country is well served by having two strong parties because there are real policy differences and there's merit to, I think, many of these arguments. And you and I have even spoken about this, like even this idea of giving $2,000, right? So the new stimulus that he wants to do is to give $1,400 stimulus, plus the $600 would be the $2,000 for every American. You could argue that that's not the best approach, right? Like there is
I'll argue that right now.
Exactly. Like there is a very real. Yes, there is a very real argument that that is a waste of money. Half of this country is doing just fine. And in fact, we have a K-shaped recovery. Half of this country, if you've kept your job and you're probably spending a lot less money, you're probably saving money, or you're putting it into the stock market, which is part of the reason that we've seen this run on stocks. That money, you don't need that money. That is a stimulus check give that to people who need it. Give that to a business that's about to go under, or give that to people who are unemployed. It's just, that's real, right? And I think that all of that and these real policy differences and discussions and how to best move forward, even with vaccine rollout, which we're about to get to, it's all kind of been overshadowed by just this craziness around the election and pardons and impeachment. It's like we've lost our ability to have real policy discussions.
No, you're right, and there'll be plenty of time for us to talk more about the stimulus checks and whatnot. Because I think a lot of that happened when we were off over Christmas, so we didn't get a chance to get into it. But I mean, look, I'll have my liberal card revoked here for saying that. But you're right, I am in better financial shape today than I was a year ago. Right? I have way more money. I have way more money in my checking account because I haven't spent it on anything. I don't need $2,000 from the government. My friend who hasn't had a job in a year is the one who needs the money. But let's table that. We'll have time to talk about
that. Right, and
later.
the problem is, right, that it's just the whatever. Okay, well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it for another day. Let's talk about what's going on right now with the pandemic. It took the U.S. until September to hit 200,000 COVID deaths, then 3 more months to hit 300,000. So now we're at 400,000 a month later. The unimaginable toll comes as vaccine distribution is slowly ramping up. The country's averaging about 777,000 doses in the last week, according to the Bloomberg tracker. The head of the World Health Organization saying that the world is on the brink of a, quote, catastrophic moral failure when it comes to distributing the vaccines, and condemned the, quote, me first approach that's leaving the most vulnerable at risk. The Biden administration plans to immediately mobilize the National Guard and FEMA to increase distribution.
Which, of course, begs the question, why haven't we been doing that, right? I mean, look, the thing that I'm excited about the Biden presidency is I am just excited for there to be some semblance of competence running this country. I honestly don't even care. I don't even think it's political to say that. Like, at the very least, there's going to be people in charge here who seem to have some knowledge of, like, how the federal government should be playing some part in this, right? So that I think we can agree on is going to be a good thing. And getting the National Guard and FEMA activated to start giving out vaccines, again, we should have been doing this for the last 2 months, but at least we're going to start to do it. Well, I know that I've been a little more optimistic than you, Jill, and my parents actually got their first doses this weekend, so that's probably adding to it.
Congratulations!
Yes, so I'm very happy about that. Definitely, very thankful and grateful. But I want people to stay positive. We are getting better. Every day is a little bit better. I want to see 2.5 million doses a day. I think that we could potentially get there. I think especially when like I said, when we have the National Guard and FEMA involved, especially when CVS and Walgreens start getting their act together and they start giving out shots, I think it's really going to ramp up. I just think that, I think that in the media sometimes we almost like we almost get afraid to oversell things for just because we get bit in the butt so many times when when things don't work out, and people, especially after this last year, have just gotten so used to things being an abject failure. But I just want to remember, like the vaccine is incredible. What happened with this vaccine? This is Jonas Salk discovering the polio cure in our lifetimes. It's amazing. Yes, the rollout has been insanely frustrating, and of course it was going to be because we don't have a functioning government at the moment. But just stay hopeful. I'm gonna stay on this until we all have our shots, Jill.
I'm not going to breathe a sigh of relief until my parents have their vaccine. And by the way, somebody wrote me, and I'm going to write them back, but my friend who I mentioned in Florida, who is the one who is helping to register older people who could get their vaccines, she actually said if there is anybody out there who is struggling navigating that system, she'd be happy to help. So feel free to email us, and I will pass along your contact information to her. And thank you to her because it's just incredibly generous of her time. So yeah,
but to be clear, that's for Florida only.
For Florida only, yeah, because each state has their own crazy system. Okay, overseas, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been jailed for at least 30 days after he defiantly returned to Moscow after spending 5 months in Germany recovering from a suspected poisoning attempt by the Russian government. He was arrested upon arrival, taken to a police station, and then put in front of a judge without notice for a sort of sham trial. He is now in jail, pending trial on different charges that can see him imprisoned for 3.5 years.
I sort of had a feeling something like this was going to happen when he said last week that he was going to go back to Russia. But the speed of the retribution against him, that's brazen even for Putin, and drew a lot of criticism over the weekend from countries around the world, the United States included. Look, you got to hand it to this guy, not Putin, Navalny. He's got serious cojones to go back there when he could have easily just stayed in Germany or really anywhere to just apply for asylum. But that's real courage to go back to a country like that where they want to basically see you killed, and you don't see much of that nowadays. So I'm rooting for him.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think when we talk about the damage to America's reputation abroad, and just, as you said, a hallmark has always been this peaceful transfer of power. Where do we get off even saying to a Putin right now, like, release Navalny, right? I feel like we've kind of lost our moral high ground.
That's a much better way of saying what I said earlier. Yes, that's the problem. Yes.
Meanwhile, WhatsApp delayed an upcoming privacy update from February 8th to May 15th amid backlash and confusion over what user data would be automatically shared with parent Facebook. We told you about this last week. WhatsApp trying to make it clear that Facebook will not be able to read your messages. It will, though, get access to your phone's metadata. Meanwhile, the privacy-centric search engine DuckDuckGo says it is now handling 100 million searches a day as more users switch over from Google.
That's a landmark for them.
Is that the one that you use, Carlo?
Yeah, it is. And it's actually really good. I highly recommend it.
I have to now Google DuckDuckGo, though. Like, I don't know how to get to DuckDuckGo without Googling it.
DuckDuckGo.com, bookmark that, make it your search engine. So here's what I do. I use DuckDuckGo as my search engine, and I use the Brave browser, which is really good. There's no location tracking, none of that stuff. I've turned the location tracking off on my phone and my laptop, so it's a little bit annoying sometimes because there are websites where you want them to know your, location for shipping or whatever. So you just have to manually do it, but I think it's worth it. I think that we got to, take a little bit of the authority back in our own digital lives. But 100 million searches a day for DuckDuckGo, that's a landmark. But think about this: Google, 5.56 billion daily searches. So a long way to dethroning Google there.
I'm gonna try it, Carlo. You've piqued my interest.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, with 5 days until the AFC Championship game, Kansas City Chiefs QB Patrick Mahomes in the NFL's concussion protocol. He was pulled from Sunday's game against the Browns after a bad hit. His condition is still unknown. The Chiefs play the Bills for a Super Bowl berth on Sunday night. Wow.
That was a great game. Lamar Jackson on the Ravens, he was also pulled for the concussion protocol on Sunday. So he and Mahomes, two of the biggest stars in the league, in the playoffs, getting yanked from those games. That's a big deal. You didn't used to see that. I mean, not long ago, the NFL wasn't taking you off the field in the playoffs unless you were like dead or paralyzed, pretty much. So I think it definitely shows that the league at least wants to be seen as taking brain injuries seriously. Whether or not they actually are is a different question. Though I think that you can bet, as long as Mahomes' eyeballs are looking straight ahead, he's going to be on the field Sunday if I had to bet.
And finally, if you are feeling lucky, a combined $1.6 billion $1.6 billion in lottery winnings is up for grabs this week. The Mega Millions currently at $850 million ahead of tonight's drawing. The Powerball $730 million. That drawing is tomorrow. We don't ever do stories like this, Carlo. I sense that you're interested in this and are getting a lottery ticket.
I'm not usually a lottery guy, but I feel like, this is a big one. So people should know if they're feeling lucky, go get your ticket. And plus, it's just a good excuse to get out of the house, right?
But I was going to say, but make sure you wear a mask, maybe too.
Exactly. But yeah, the third and sixth largest jackpots in history, respectively. So I'm gonna use that as my excuse when I go on my walk today, to get a ticket. I'll get you one if you want.
Please do.
We'll split it, what, 64? Yeah.
All right, everybody, that's what you need to know for Tuesday, January 19th.
All right, guys, see you tomorrow.